And welcome back to the Wellness Paradox podcast. I'm so grateful that you can join us on this journey towards greater human flourishing. As always, I'm your host, Michael Stack, an exercise physiologist by training and a health entrepreneur and a health educator by trade. And I'm fascinated by a phenomena I call the wellness paradox. This paradox, as I view it, is the trust, interaction, and communication gap that exists between fitness professionals and our medical community. This podcast is all about closing off that gap by disseminating the latest, most evidence-based, and most engaging information in the health sciences. And to do that in episode 93, I'm joined by Rachel Lavin. Now, this is a really interesting conversation I'm going to have with Rachel, who's a fitness and a wellness professional by trade and training herself. But what this conversation is going to dive into is the concept of body neutrality or weight neutrality in fitness and how we cultivate this approach. And the real heart of the conversation here is around, what is the important outcome to be aiming for with the people we work with? Is it the number on the scale, or is it overall health and well-being? What does society define it as? What does science say? And then what's most constructive, productive, and healthy for our clients? And Rachel brings such an interesting perspective to this conversation because she has struggled with her weight, as she says in the episode, for the better part of 4 decades. And in fact, she had an epiphany when, as she'll tell us, she was at the lowest weight and smallest size she was ever at, and realized that despite being there, she simply wasn't happy. And that was a significant professional inflection point for her that really leads into this conversation around body or weight neutrality. Any information we'd like to share with you from today's episode can be found on the show notes page by going to wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 93. Please enjoy this conversation with Rachel Lavin. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Rachel Lavin. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
So I'm super excited to be having this discussion. You and I, connected via social media, but we realize we have a mutual friend in Debbie Bellinger. I feel like everywhere I go, I meet somebody that knows Debbie. So I'm excited to get into this discussion because it's something that I think is so important for our industry to be hearing this, concept of, hey, maybe the number on the scale isn't the most important thing for us to be focusing on. And we're going to dive into that. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your background, kind of what got you to this point, and what are you bringing in this discussion?
Absolutely. This story is so personal for me because I lived it. I've been in the fitness industry for over 20 years as a group. I'll date myself and tell you I used to teach jazzercise and then group X and then personal training and then health coaching. But I was always, a woman who struggled with her body weight. I was always on a diet. I was always trying to be smaller. I was told many times in my career that I didn't have your typical trainer body. And so that was something that I was always striving for. And I would diet, get small. And then, I would just feel defeated, and the weight would come back on, the diet would stop, I would binge. It was just an awful, awful roller coaster that I spent about 4 decades on. So when we talk about the body neutral approach, this is very near and very near and dear to my heart. And I really hope that this little tiny sliver of body positivity is going to just keep going up and up and up. And I think with help, people like you, and there's so many wonderful people out there that are really trying to make changes in our society and the medical profession and how we see women and men in bigger bodies. So I'm really excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, you bring I think such an important perspective, because I think a lot of fitness professionals, got into fitness because they were athletes, and just genetically, they've been able to be at a very, very low body weight and lean body composition their entire life. And sometimes I feel like it is hard for those people to relate to somebody who's struggled with their weight for so many years in their life. So it's I always find it really interesting when somebody takes a personal struggle that they've dealt with and they turn it into their, professional purpose and passion, because there's so much more substance behind it. I do have a kind of a question that's related to that, is what got you to the point where you felt like, you know what, this is a crusade that I need to go on? Because I also have to imagine it's a little bit of an uncomfortable journey for you, right? Like, I mean, it's not easy to get out here on a podcast and admit, hey, I've struggled with my weight for 40 years and it's been hard. What was it that got you to say, hey, this is a crusade that I want to take up?
That is a good question. It is a very full answer, but I'll truncate it for you. I think the thing that I really resonate with and that I share my story a lot is when I turned 40, I just was exhausted from the emotional and the mental and the physical just stress on my mind and my body of the numerous diets that I, told you about a moment ago. And when I turned 40 years old, this feeling of, I'm so done with this. I'm so over this. Enough is enough. I just want to be happy. I want to enjoy the latter part of my life, but how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
And I truly believe when you make a decision that you want something different, the universe presents things that maybe were presented to you 1,000 times before, but it just clicks that one time. And books came into my life and people came into my life and experiences came into my life. And I will tell you, when I was 40, that's when I was my lowest weight ever. I was a size 0, size 2, you would think that, oh my God, I finally reached my goal weight. I should be the happiest woman in the world. And I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel like it was my body. I didn't feel like it was who I really was. So it was a very interesting time in my life. And I think that it was time for me to figure out what I really wanted, who I really wanted to be in this world. And when I got there, I realized that it was my mission. It was something I needed to do because I felt alone my whole life. And I don't know how many times I can tell you that when I tell my story and I share my story with people, they're like, oh, I always felt alone too. So it's just such a beautiful experience to teach these people that you are not alone.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I just want to point out for all of our guests that are listening, as empathetic as we can be to people who are in different situations and struggle with different things, I'm never going to know, as a man, what it's like to deal with those, pressures as a woman. And I think the irony of what you said there is, you're 40 years old, you were at your, goal weight, the lowest size you'd ever been, and you were so unhappy that you realized something had to change. And that, if nothing else, shows the disconnect between, sometimes, what we're told, oftentimes what we're told about the number on the scale and your size and the happiness that it's going to confer in your life, because those two things clearly didn't sync up for you.
That's correct. It was an interesting time. And I love the way you put it, because that's just perfectly said.
So let's start to talk about this on a little bit deeper of level. You mentioned it, earlier, a body neutral approach. I think people have a general idea of what that term means, but unpack that a little bit for us so we can understand it in the context of what we do as fitness and wellness professionals.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is I am in no way, shape, or form advocating for not taking care of your body, whatever that looks like to you. Nourishment, movement, rest. For me, I truly believe are the 3 most important things that you can do for yourself. But I also believe that letting go of feeling like I can never eat bread again, or I can never eat fat again, or I'm addicted to sugar, all those things that swirl around in our industry. And trust me, I believed them at the time too. So I know how powerful our thoughts are. So I just would hope that people are open to the fact that not everybody comes in the same size, the shape, height, weight, All of those are different for each individual. That being said, it's so important for you as an individual, me as an individual, to learn what my body needs. My body cannot survive on just 3 meals a day or 2 meals a day. I just don't work like that. I need a couple more, or I need a snack, or I need something to get through my day to stay focused and stay, ready to go at any moment. And some people, that's not what that looks like for them. So I would hope that we as fitness professionals, medical professionals, and individuals start to embrace the differences, because they're not a bad thing. One size does not fit all. One diet does not fit all. That is so antiquated, and we need to, like I said, embrace the fact that we're all different. And body neutral, in my opinion, just means that we are all different, and it doesn't have to look the same. It doesn't have to feel the same. It's okay.
So, staying on that notion, for a second, because this is called lots of different things, right? The body positivity movement, health at any size. I mean, there's all kinds of, words that have tried to get wrapped around this. What I find interesting is that, and I've been in the industry, to date myself, over 20 years as well. And, I think back to when I started in the industry, you didn't hear about this to the extent that you hear about it now. And I don't know if we would be having this conversation 15 or 20 years ago, unfortunately. What do you think has led to this, a greater acceptance of kind of, body neutrality and the desire to have these conversations?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, other than there's many more people, I feel like, standing up and just saying, I am so over this. I'm done with this. I just want to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think the movement is taken off because so many people are getting, as we age, I think it's just a gift. As we age, we start becoming less and less conformative, and we become less and less like feeling like we have to fit into a certain box. And so I think as we're getting older, we're starting to say, you know what, that doesn't work for me anymore. I want no part of it. And it's trickling down to the younger generations, which is really wonderful. But I will tell you that even in the 80s, there was some, and forgive me for even using this term because it's just so gross, but plus size models, right? So it had a moment, and then it went away. Mm-hmm. And then it came back in the 2000s, and it's not going away, because finally I think women are feeling empowered to say, I come in a bigger size, and there's nothing wrong with that. The terms that people are using, I think, are just buzzwords, like body neutrality, body positivity. That's fine if that's what you associate with. But for me, it's an internal switch that needs to come on. And for me, it's about loving yourself. It's about loving who you are and what you look like and taking care of that. So I use the term body love. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. It is an interesting perspective. And, I ask you that question knowing that it's not a fair question to ask, because there's no real answer that you can pinpoint. I mean, I've heard people say, our diet culture is so pervasive on one extreme that, the other extreme needs to exist to be able to balance it out. I've heard that. I also think that there's a general acceptance of the complexity of kind of body shape and size, to the point you made earlier. We are all different, and that's not just in terms of our anatomical structure. That also is in terms of just the way we work hormonally and physiologically. So I think there's a greater consciousness to it. And, I think social media, plays a role both in a good way and a bad way in this kind of a conversation. But I do find it interesting. But the one thing you said that I completely agree with it is, it's here to stay now. Like this acceptance, just this, you use the word, love, acceptance, whatever word you want to put on it. It is the fact that, we are different and embracing that. What I am curious about is, our industry, the fitness industry in particular, has not broadly embraced this. And I would say that even right now, as you and I sit here and have this conversation, it is not a broadly embraced concept. Ironically, I just got out of a meeting, a marketing meeting, not 20 minutes ago, with our marketing consultant, who said, here are the top 5 search terms you should use. And the top 5, 3 of the top 5 were weight loss, right? So like it's clear that this is still a thing. So why do you think that, despite the positive conversation that's starting to happen with this, why is this notion of your body size dictates your health and your fitness, why do you feel it's still so pervasive?
Wow, you're asking the hard-hitting questions today, Mike. Oh God, this is again such a loaded answer, but the truth of the matter is the diet industry is still so powerful. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they're so powerful, and I love to start my talks like this, is because every single diet works in the beginning. Anytime you start a diet, it works, right? Because you're restricting something, or you're putting something in your body, you're hindering, you're something. Your body is responding to what you are or not giving it. So that's why people will always believe that a diet works, because it does.
Yeah.
Until your body wises up and says, hey, I know already what to do. I don't need to be told when to eat. I don't need to be told when to go to the bathroom or sleep and tell me if you agree with this, but it just shuts down and it starts fighting back. And sometimes that means you plateau. That sometimes means that you gain weight back, or that you stop losing weight, or things start to go wrong with your body, your skin, your hair, your things that are normally on a day-to-day, you don't even need to tell your body to do it, just shuts down. Then you start to have to go to the doctor and to the hospital and to get on pills and on drugs, and it's just never ending. And unfortunately, the diet industry has convinced us that we need diets to be happy. So until you and I and the many more people out there who are on our team can stop that mindset, it's just going to be a battle that we are going to continue to fight.
Yes, I think you nailed it. And yes, I realize I'm asking the impossible questions. Like if we could solve these issues in our podcast, we'd make the world a infinitely better place. So I'm gonna make a couple of comments, but then I'm gonna pin what you said and come back to it around, hey, until we start doing some things differently, and what our team can do, because ultimately, coming out of this discussion, we want the fitness and wellness professionals that are listening to this, to consider this. But what you said in terms of the body, fighting against weight loss is a basic evolutionary defense mechanism. I mean, our body does not want to change. It certainly doesn't want to lose body tissue. And I'm a physiologist, so I can nerd out on all of the things that happen. But I mean, everyone's experienced it. You lose weight and then you stop, right? Well, something's happening there physiologically that causes you to stop. Most people lose a bunch of weight, and to your point earlier, they gain it back. Well, what's happening there? Clearly something is happening physiologically. So there's all these underlying mechanisms that the body just wants to fight against to stay the same. That's physiology 101. It's homeostasis, right? So I think that it's interesting. And what you said, which is so accurate, is that every single diet works. I mean, it's like, why are people so confused by, well, should I do low carb? Should I do keto? Should I do the Mediterranean diet? It's because as soon as you start eating healthier and different than what you're eating and less, it's going to work until it doesn't, which it always doesn't. And then you're right back where you started. And it's such an interesting, paradigm to think about. But there's so much money in it, right? I mean, there's so much money in weight loss. So here's a question, because I've been in the industry for a really long time. Like, I mean, how much money do you think you have spent on, weight loss over the years in some way, shape, or form? I mean, do you have any idea? Could you even estimate it?
Let's just say I could be retired by now.
Yeah, right, exactly. You know what? I think of it. I think of the, tens of thousands of dollars that people have spent and the time that they spent. And it's so interesting. And I think,
But not just on that, Mike. I mean, think about every time you lose weight, you go out and you buy a whole new wardrobe. Every time you gain weight, you go out, you buy a whole new. So it's not just the actual diet, it's the results of the diet that also pulls on your purse strings too, right?
yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, I think for a lot of the fitness professionals that are listening that maybe haven't, oscillated with their weight, they might not even realize that is a real concern. And, I also think there's the opportunity cost of living a life that you feel is, fulfilling and happy, when you're spending it, in the gym, trying, in vain to lose a certain amount of weight. So I think, the question that's coming up for me on this, it really is around what fitness professionals can start to do about this. Because ultimately, like, without diving deep into the physiology, I think we all can agree that it's very hard, if not impossible, to lose a bunch of weight and to keep a bunch of weight off for a long time. And a different approach is needed. So what can fitness professionals do to cultivate this approach?
I love this question. And I really hope that, because you're talking a lot about personal trainers or group X who have never understood the having an issue with their weight. I mean, I've worked with many trainer who just didn't understand, why can't they just eat healthy? Why can't you? And I always ask them, have you ever been heavy? Because to me, I already know the answer.
Yeah.
So I would really love for the people listening today, you need to kind of sit with yourself and be honest with yourself. Am I capable of being empathetic to someone who struggles with their body? Am I able to program them in a different way than I train some of my other clients? Am I able to look at them and not get angry because they're not getting results? It's not a reflection on you. Trust me, they have tried everything to get the weight off. You're not a failure. I think some trainers really take it personally, and you can't. Get to know these clients a little bit better. Find out what their habits have been, because anyone who knows someone who has been in a bigger body, smaller body, whatever, like myself, they don't necessarily eat enough. You think we're sitting here gorging ourselves, and that's just not true. Skipping meals is pretty common. Not eating enough calories, not eating the right kind of calories, very common. So people in bigger bodies are not just sitting through the Burger King drive-through. Trust me, it is a struggle. It's a struggle. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. So what my meal source was frozen foods. That's what I grew up on. So you got to get to know your clients, understand what their background is, understand that what they're really trying to accomplish, and accept that sometimes the answer is not weight loss. They just want to move. They just want to get through life and feel good and strong and healthy. So my suggestion would be create a new assessment, okay? The last thing somebody who comes to you who is at their wit's end, because trust me, 9 out of 10 times you're getting a client who has already tried everything else. Be as empathetic as you can. Create an assessment form that doesn't have to do with measurements, the scale, a measuring tape, or the calipers. Don't even let that be a part of the conversation right now. Find out what their real goals are, and you may be surprised to find out that it's not weight loss.
I'd like to take a quick break from today's episode to tell you more about one of our sponsors. As all of you are well aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has been absolutely devastating for the fitness industry, with upwards of 1/3 of our clubs closing nationally on a permanent basis. One of the few stabilizing forces during this very tumultuous period of time has been IHRSA, the Global Trade Association for the Health and Fitness Industry. On my crusade to make fitness professionals part of our healthcare continuum, the work that IHRSA is doing is absolutely vital. They provide advocacy and lobbying support at both the federal and the state level. They support state alliances in many ways, and they also provide resources and best practices to club owners, operators, and individual fitness professionals. Indeed, if we are truly going to become part of the healthcare continuum, we must speak with one unified voice. We must have best practices that we implement, and we must come together as an industry to ensure the public, the medical community, and lawmakers hear our message loud and clear, that movement is medicine and it is essential. That is the work that IHRSA is doing. They've recently revamped their membership structure, allowing large clubs, small clubs, boutiques, and individual professionals to join the organization for an appropriate price that allows them to have access to all of these many great resources and allows us to unify and amplify our voice as an industry. For more information on the amazing work that IHRSA is doing, go to their website, IHRSA.org. That's IHRSA.org, IHRSA.org, to look in a little bit further into the work IHRSA is doing to unify our industry, to move us closer to being a part of that healthcare continuum. Now back to today's episode. I think that's such an important point. There's this assumption automatically that if someone who is in a larger body, walks into your office and you're a personal trainer, that they're immediately there to lose weight. There's that ingrained assumption. And what it sounds like you're saying is that, starting with a degree of empathy and curiosity is important, but also reframing results. And I think, you mentioned that, earlier around, the trainer being frustrated that the client isn't, getting a certain result. But I think that's all in the context of what result means. And if your paradigm for results is losing weight, then obviously, if that's not what the person is looking to do, and there is some discord there, then of course you're going to be frustrated. So, I mean, you work with people to help them achieve their fitness and their wellness goals. How do you enter into that conversation of meeting them where they're at? I mean, you talked about an alternative assessment. Like, how do you start the process so it's comfortable and safe for them?
I do now, because I used to, I had another life
Yes.
before I had my own kind of awakening. I will say though, I never, ever in the real world did the body comp, because I know how it made me feel, and there was no way I was going to put somebody through that. But talking nutrition, talking diet, your goal, weight loss, okay, great, we'll get right on that. So the conversation now looks like this. I want to learn about you. I want to know about you. What brought you here today? Mm-hmm. And I give them plenty of time to answer that question. And of course, still a lot of times, because it's ingrained, well, I know I need to lose weight. I should be doing that. I should be doing it. I know I need to. And then once they're done, I say, I don't know if you heard how many shoulds and needs you said to me. I'm going to ask you the question again, and I want you to take it and answer me in a way where I want to. Yeah. I want to do this. And let's go through it again. And it's very interesting, because it's like that takes people aback, because even still in that interview process between a trainer and a client, they're still thinking, well, I have to say what I think he or she wants to hear. And of course, they're going to want me to lose weight, so I better talk about that. And if you open it up and create a safe space for them to be real honest, then you can create some magic, and you can train somebody and have a real relationship with someone. And it's not going to be, okay, I want to do 10 sessions with you, get me ready for this wedding, and then you'll never see me again. Yeah. It's going to be a long-term relationship, which is good for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so interesting what you said too. This starts out by putting the spotlight on them and really understanding what they want. And I also think something you said is so important for people to hear. And look, I'll be the first one to admit that I've also done this at points during my career. I think the skin fold caliper is quite possibly the most damaging tool that our industry has ever employed. I think of, a young 22-year-old Mike Stack, taking skin folds on a mid-50s woman, with a BMI of 38, going, how horrifying of an experience must that have been? But the irony is that I was taught that it was the thing to do, and the client also expected it. It was kind of the expectation, and it's shifting those kind of things. But I love how this starts with a conversation and language and actually listening to somebody. And I would venture to say that not only does it develop a great relationship, but I think in a lot of cases, it's probably one of the few opportunities somebody's actually had to share on that kind of level. Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah, sometimes there's tears.
I bet.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's important to point out that, we're not saying here that, losing weight necessarily is a bad thing. That's not what we're saying. What it sounds like we're saying is the emphasis of, what are you focusing on with your diet and your exercise program? If you eat healthier and you exercise, and if some weight is lost, well, we're not saying that's a bad thing, but we're saying, what's the emphasis of what you're doing, right? It's what are you leading with? Are you leading with health, or are you leading with weight? Is that kind of how you look at it?
It is, but there's also one more factor for me. And if we could teach our clients to finally trust their own body, that is so freeing for someone. It's so freeing to learn that what my hunger signals are telling me. And listen, I'm right there with you, Mike. There's for 3 decades or 22 decades, did I tell my client some stupid shit, right? I mean, I have said, don't eat this because it has that, or drink water because you're not really, I've said it all, done it all. I've already asked the universe for forgiveness because I didn't know then. Yeah. I know better now. So I think that if I can help you to trust your body so you don't need me anymore, then that is really the goal. Because if we are all out there in the world trusting our bodies, then you're going to pay me to exercise. You're going to pay me to move my body, move your body in a way that feels good to you, because you're not worried about all that other stuff. You're not worried about the scale and the calipers and the weight and the shame of coming into a gym because you're not a size 4. You're coming there to train with me because you're training for something, fun or just to get through life. So those are the kind of relationships that I think we as fitness professionals need to start striving for. It's okay to let your clients be an individual. It's okay for them to be self-sufficient. We want that.
That's such an important lesson. I mean, the best measure of a coach is the ability for the coach to not be needed anymore. And, I always remind fitness professionals, there's more than enough people out there that need our help, especially around a really positive message like this. And I think, that's probably the take home with this conversation. What you just said is that, this is about putting the spotlight on the client and, really what they want out of the process. And if you listen, that emerges. I love this topic, right? I could keep going on and on and on about this topic, but I want to be sensitive to time. Before we end, last couple questions I want to ask you. First off, you wrote a book, so briefly tell us just a little bit about your book, because I've had a chance to kind of look through some of the info. I think it's a very, very neat read. So just talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I felt in my soul that I was meant to write a book for a long time. Mm-hmm. I always thought I can't do it until I've got the weight off and I can say, look at me, I kept the weight off. But I would start it and it would never be completed, because I realized that after this last time, I wasn't really sharing my truth. Yeah. And that it was more important to write about all my failures and successes, and what happened to my mindset. And so finally, when I had that last big weight loss and then I gained the weight back and COVID happened and I had nothing to do with my time, I said, you know what? Now is the time. Let's do this. And I talk about this all the time because I believe this. I think the universe presents things to you when you are ready. And I found a publisher, I found, the time, and it just, everything was seamless, no bumps in the road. And it was a beautiful, fun experience. I wrote my own book, I put it out in the world, and it's my journey of having the ups and the downs and feeling hopeless and feeling betrayed by my own body. And then realizing I was doing this to myself and that I could be happy. I could be happy at whatever size that my body deems it is healthy for me. And I know because I've dieted my whole life, I'm still trying to find what homeostasis is. But I've also learned that I can't do one without the other. So I can't just eat nutritious foods and never move my body. I'm not built that way. Yeah. I have to do both. I have to nourish, I have to move my body. And so that's what works for me. And that's what I share in my book.
I think that that's such an amazing opportunity, to share. I imagine on some level it was pretty therapeutic for you, but I also imagine that, what a great opportunity for, fitness professionals to really understand and look under the hood of, someone who's struggled with this throughout their entire life that's willing to share. I think that's an amazing gift that you've given to people to be able to understand the emotions and the psychology that underlies that kind of lived experience. So kudos to you for, writing a book, first off, because that's hard enough, let alone a book on something that's so such a sensitive and emotion filled topic. Again, I could keep going on about this. I think the book is an entire separate fun conversation, but we'll have to save for another time. Where can people go if they want to find out about all the great work you are doing? Where's the best place to go?
I would say that I just rebranded myself. So I've been under the umbrella Rachel Lavin Fitness for many, many years. And just last week rebranded to Rachel Lavin Wellness because I feel like, what I'm doing is encompassing all of it. My website is up and running and looks great. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. Good job, Dad.
And then social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all under Rachel Lavin Wellness.
Got it. And we'll link up to all of those in the show notes page so everyone can access them. We'll also link up to Amazon where people can purchase your book, which I really recommend. What a great opportunity to understand, the lived experience of the clients that we work with. Before we end, I'll end the podcast with the last question I always end the podcast on around the wellness paradox, which is, how I view it, the trust, interaction, and communication gap that exists between fitness professionals and the medical community. From your perspective, as someone who's been in the industry for so long with a very unique perspective, what's one piece of advice you can give to fitness professionals to close off that gap?
I would love it if we would stop seeing ourselves as separate entities. It takes a village to help people, and it doesn't mean that you're not enough, that you're not doing your job. You're one person. So talk to your clients' doctors, to have an arsenal of therapists, nutritionists, doctors that you recommend to people that you trust. Have open communication because we need to work together. It's way overdue that it's like, oh, doctors, you do that, trainers, we do that, and we refuse to meet in the middle. We really, like you said, I love that term, bridge that gap. It's been way too long. There's a trust to be had. Really embrace sharing what you know with your clients' doctors. It can really change their programming. It could change their results if you know what's going on with them.
Awesome. Rachel Lavin, thank you so much for joining us on the Wellness Paradox.
Thank you, Mike. I had a lovely time.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rachel as much as I did. If you found it insightful and informative, please share with your friends and colleagues. Those shares make a big difference for us. Any information we'd like to share with you from today's episode can be found on the show notes page by going to wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 93. Please be on the lookout for our next episode when it drops in 2 weeks. And don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast platform. Until we chat again next, please be well.